Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Frontier, staring at the massive alien ships that filled his view screen. The vessels were unlike anything humans had ever seen. They curved and twisted like living things, their silver surfaces pulsing with blue light. Jake had been exploring space for 15 years, but this was humanity's first contact with an alien civilization. "Captain, they're sending another message," said Emma Stone from her communication station. Her voice was steady, but Jake could see the excitement in her eyes. This moment would change everything for the human race. "Put it through, Emma." The main screen shifted to show a tall, elegant being with pale blue skin and 4 arms. Its eyes were large and golden, and when it spoke, the words came through the translation device in perfect English. "Greetings, Captain Morrison. I am High Chancellor Vextar of the Zephyrian Empire. We have been watching your species with great interest. You have traveled far from your home world." Jake stepped forward. "Chancellor Vextar, I speak for humanity. We come in peace, seeking knowledge and friendship among the stars." Vextar made a gesture that might have been a smile. "Peace. Yes, we value peace above all things in our empire. For over 2,000 years, 12 different species have lived together in harmony under our guidance. We follow the oldest law of civilized beings." "The oldest law?" Jake asked. "Never betray your own kind to outsiders," Vextar said solemnly. "This law has kept peace in our sector of the galaxy since before your species learned to use fire. No member of our empire has ever violated this sacred rule. It is what separates civilized beings from animals." Lieutenant Commander Lisa Parker, standing beside Jake, leaned forward with interest. As the ship's xenobiologist, she was fascinated by alien cultures. "How do you enforce such a law across so many different species?" "We do not enforce it," Vextar replied. "It enforces itself. Any species that would betray their own kind cannot be trusted. They destroy themselves from within. We have seen it happen many times throughout history. Entire civilizations have fallen because they forgot this simple truth." Ryan Brooks, the chief engineer, shifted uncomfortably. He was a practical man who didn't trust things that seemed too good to be true. "And what happens to species that don't follow this law?" Vextar's golden eyes seemed to dim slightly. "They no longer exist, Engineer Brooks. The universe has no place for those who would sell out their own people." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The message was clear, even if it was delivered politely. "Chancellor, what do you want from humanity?" "We wish to offer you a place in our empire," Vextar said. "Your species has advanced remarkably quickly. In just a few thousand years, you have gone from primitive hunters to space travelers. This is unusual. Most species take much longer to reach this level of development." "You want us to join your empire?" Jake asked. "As junior partners, yes. You would have protection, access to our technology, and the wisdom of species that have existed for millennia. In return, you would contribute your unique abilities to our collective strength." Dr. Kevin Shaw, the ship's psychologist, had been listening quietly. Now he spoke up. "What if we refuse?" Vextar was silent for a long moment. "We hope you will not refuse, Dr. Shaw. The galaxy can be a dangerous place for species that stand alone. There are forces out there that would destroy humanity without a second thought. We offer protection." "And if we still refuse?" Jake pressed. "Then you would be on your own," Vextar said simply. "We would wish you well, but we could not help you against the threats that are coming." Emma Stone looked up from her station. "Captain, I'm detecting 11 other ships moving into position around us. All of them are different designs." "Those are ships from our member species," Vextar explained. "They wish to greet humanity as well. Each has a representative aboard my vessel who would like to meet with you." Jake looked at Lisa, who nodded. Meeting with multiple alien species would be an incredible opportunity to learn. "We would be honored to meet with them, Chancellor." "Excellent. Please bring a small team to my ship. We have prepared quarters for you and a meeting hall where you can speak with representatives from all 12 species." 2 hours later, Jake found himself in a vast chamber aboard the alien vessel. The room was filled with beings unlike anything he had ever imagined. Some were tall and thin like Vextar. Others were short and round, covered in fur or scales. A few looked almost human, while others were so alien that Jake couldn't even guess how they moved or communicated. Lisa Parker was taking notes frantically, trying to record everything she saw. Ryan Brooks stayed close to Jake, his hand resting on his sidearm. Emma Stone worked with a small translation device trying to understand the various languages being spoken. Each of our member species brings something unique to the Empire, Vextar explained as he led them around the room. The Corvani are master engineers. The Threll are gifted healers. The Vash understand energy manipulation better than anyone else in the galaxy. What would humanity bring? Jake asked. That remains to be seen, Vextar replied. But your rapid development suggests you have something special to offer. They spent hours meeting with different representatives. Each one told stories of their home world and how they had joined the Empire. All of them spoke of the peace and prosperity they had found under Zephyrian protection. But Jake noticed something troubling. When he asked about species that had refused to join the Empire, the representatives would fall silent or change the subject. When he pressed for details about these mysterious threats that required protection, the answers were vague and uncertain. As the day wore on, Sub-Commander Kethara, Vextar's aide, approached Jake privately. She was younger than the Chancellor, with the same pale blue skin but only 2 arms instead of 4. Captain Morrison, she said quietly, I hope you will consider our offer carefully. There have been species in the past that chose to remain independent. None of them survived. What happened to them? Jake asked. Kethara's golden eyes met his. They broke the oldest law. They turned against each other when times became difficult. Brother fought brother, and in the end there was nothing left to save. That evening, back aboard the Frontier, Jake met with his senior officers. The mood was tense as they discussed what they had learned. I don't trust them, Ryan Brooks said bluntly. This whole thing feels like a protection racket. Join us or face the consequences. But the technology we could gain, Lisa Parker argued. Some of the things I saw today could advance human science by centuries. At what cost? Dr. Shaw asked. They're asking us to give up our independence. Emma Stone looked up from her reports. Captain, I've been analyzing their communication patterns. There's something they're not telling us about this oldest law of theirs. What do you mean? Jake asked. The way they talk about it, it's not just a moral principle, it's like a test. They're watching to see how we react to the concept of betrayal. Jake stared out at the alien fleet surrounding his ship. 6 months. That's what Vextar had given humanity to decide. 6 months to choose between joining the Empire or facing whatever threats lurked in the darkness of space. But as Jake looked at his crew, at these humans who had followed him to the edge of known space, he wondered if the real test had already begun. President Helen Carter sat at the head of the long table in the White House Situation Room. The faces around her showed the strain of 3 weeks of non-stop debate. Earth's leaders had been arguing about the Zephyrian offer since Jake Morrison's report arrived, and they were no closer to agreement. We cannot trust them, said Secretary of Defense Marcus Webb, his voice sharp with frustration. Everything about this screams trap. They show up with overwhelming force, make threats disguised as warnings, and then give us 6 months to surrender. Secretary of State Nicole Reed shook her head. Marcus, you're seeing enemies where there might be allies. The technology they're offering could solve climate change and hunger, cure diseases we've never been able to treat. At the cost of our freedom, Webb shot back. Tony Martinez, Director of Colonial Affairs, raised his hand. We need to think about more than just Earth. The outer colonies are terrified. They think Earth will sacrifice them to save the home world. President Carter rubbed her temples. The weight of speaking for all humanity was crushing. What's the latest from the frontier? General Paul Adams, head of Earth Defense Command, consulted his tablet. Captain Morrison reports that the aliens are being very friendly. Too friendly, in his opinion. They're studying everything about human culture and psychology. His crew is starting to feel like lab rats. On the other side of the solar system, Governor Alan Foster of the Mars colony was having his own meeting. The red planet's government center was much smaller than Earth's, but the tension in the room was just as thick. Earth doesn't understand our situation, Foster said to his advisors. We're more vulnerable than they are. If these Zephyrians decide to attack, Mars would be destroyed first. Colonel Beth Stevens, head of Mars Defense, disagreed. Governor, we can't abandon Earth. Humanity needs to stick together. Humanity, Foster said bitterly. Easy words when you're not responsible for 3 million lives on a barely habitable planet. Meanwhile, aboard the Frontier, Jake Morrison was discovering that the Zephyrians were more interested in human psychology than human technology. Sub-Commander Cathara and her team had been conducting what they called cultural exchanges with his crew for days. Dr. Kevin Shaw had been sitting in on these sessions, and what he heard troubled him. Captain, they keep asking about betrayal in human history, he reported to Jake privately. Benedict Arnold, Judas, the Holocaust collaborators. They want to know how we react to people who turn against their own kind. What kind of questions? Jake asked. Hypothetical scenarios. What would you do if saving your family meant betraying your country? If you could save 100 humans by sacrificing 1,000, would you do it? That sort of thing. Lisa Parker had her own concerns. She had been working with Zephyrian scientists, and their research methods made her uncomfortable. They're not just studying our technology, Jake. They're mapping our social structures, our command systems, our psychology. It's like they're preparing for something. Emma Stone interrupted their conversation. Captain, I'm picking up communications. Between the alien ships, they're using a frequency they think we can't monitor. What are they saying? It's fragmentary, but I think they're discussing different human leaders on Earth and the colonies. Names, positions, psychological profiles. Jake felt a cold knot form in his stomach. They're identifying key targets. Back on Earth, those targets were beginning to receive visitors. General Adams was meeting with a Zephyrian technical advisor in his office at Defense Command headquarters. The alien, who called himself Vorkon, had 6 legs and skin that shifted color as he spoke. Your military technology is impressive for such a young species, Vorkon said, his translated voice carrying a tone of admiration. But imagine what you could accomplish with our guidance. Weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Defensive systems that could protect Earth from any threat. What's the catch? Adams asked bluntly. No catch, General. Simply cooperation. When humanity joins the Empire, we will need someone to oversee the integration of your military forces with ours. Someone with experience and authority. In New York, corporate leader Diana Ross was having a similar conversation with a different Zephyrian. This one looked more like Vextar, with blue skin and multiple arms, but smaller and more delicate. Manufacturing is the foundation of civilization, the alien Zethara was saying. Your industrial capacity is remarkable but limited by your current technology. We could increase your production by 1,000%. Diana leaned forward, in her chair. And I suppose you need someone to manage this transition? Someone who understands both human business practices and alien technology. Someone who could ensure a smooth integration. The most troubling meeting was happening on Mars. Governor Foster sat across from a Zephyrian who had introduced himself as Caxmore. Unlike the others, this alien was clearly a military officer, with scars across his armored hide and weapons built into his cybernetic limbs. Mars is strategically important, Caxmore said without preamble. It could serve as a staging area for operations throughout this solar system. The Empire values planets that can serve multiple purposes. What are you suggesting? Foster asked, though he suspected he knew. Mars could have a special status within the Empire. Autonomous governance, protection from Earth's decisions, priority access to terraforming technology. All we would need is a reliable local authority to work with. Foster's hands trembled slightly as he reached for his coffee. You're asking me to betray Earth. I am offering Mars a chance to survive and prosper regardless of what Earth decides, Caxmore corrected. Your colony could become the jewel of the solar system instead of a forgotten outpost. These conversations were happening all across human space, but the participants didn't know about each other. Each leader thought they were the only one being approached. Each thought they were being offered a unique opportunity. Emma Stone was working frantically to piece together the intercepted communications. Her translation programs were struggling with the alien languages, but patterns were emerging. "Captain," she called Jake to her station. "I think I've figured out what they're doing. Look at this." The screen showed a network diagram with human leaders' names and connections between them. "They're mapping our power structure and looking for weak points. Every major leader is being approached separately with different offers." "They're trying to divide us," Jake realized. "It gets worse," Emma continued. "I found references to something called the Fracture Protocol. From what I can tell, it's a standard Zephyrian technique for conquering new species." Dr. Shaw joined them at the station. "I've been thinking about their obsession with betrayal," he said. "What if the oldest law isn't really about preventing betrayal? What if it's about identifying species that can be turned against themselves?" Lisa Parker looked up from her research. "That would make sense. If you can get a species to destroy itself from within, you don't have to waste resources conquering them." The realization hit Jake like a physical blow. They're not testing whether we'll betray them. They're testing whether we'll betray each other. As if summoned by their conversation, Sub-Commander Kithara appeared on the bridge. Jake wondered how long she had been listening. "Captain Morrison," she said, with what might have been sympathy, "I hope your leaders are considering our offer carefully. Time is running short, and the forces that threaten this sector grow stronger each day." "What forces?" Jake demanded. "Every time someone asks about these threats, we get vague answers." Kithara's golden eyes met his. "The greatest threat to any species, Captain, themselves. History shows us that civilizations rarely fall to outside enemies. They collapse because they lose faith in each other, because they choose personal survival over collective good." "And you're just innocent observers of this process?" Jake asked. "We are teachers, Captain. We show species the choice they must make. Unity or destruction, loyalty or betrayal, the oldest law or chaos." After Kethara left, Jake gathered his senior staff in his ready room. "We need to warn Earth about what's happening," he said. "How?" Ryan Brooks asked. "If we tell them the Zephyrians are manipulating human leaders, it could make things worse. People will start suspecting each other of being compromised. But if we don't warn them, they'll walk right into the trap," Lisa pointed out. Emma Stone was monitoring communications from Earth and the colonies. "Captain, it might already be too late. I'm detecting increased military activity on Earth. Admiral Adams is moving ships without authorization from the civilian government." "And Mars?" Jake asked. "Governor Foster has stopped responding to calls from Earth. He's declared a communications blackout, claiming it's for security reasons." Jake stared out at the alien fleet surrounding his ship. The Zephyrians had been studying humanity for less than a month, and already cracks were appearing in human unity. How many other species had faced this same choice? How many had failed? "The test? Set course for Earth," Jake ordered. "Maximum speed." "Sir, the Zephyrians won't like us leaving," Ryan warned. "Then we'll find out how friendly they really are," Jake replied. He had a terrible feeling that humanity was running out of time to learn the truth about the oldest law. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday morning when Governor Alan Foster of Mars sent a message that shattered human unity forever. "Citizens of Mars," Foster said, standing in front of the red planet's flag. "Earth's government has shown they cannot be trusted to protect our interests. Today I am announcing that Mars will negotiate separately with the Zephyrian Empire for our own protection and prosperity." President Helen Carter watched the broadcast from the White House with growing horror. Secretary of Defense Marcus Webb was already on his feet, pacing like a caged animal. "This is exactly what they wanted," Webb snarled. "Foster just handed them their first victory." Secretary of State Nicole Reed looked pale. "We need to open communications with Mars immediately." "Maybe we can talk him back." "Too late for talk," Webb said. "I'm activating emergency protocols. If Foster wants to play with aliens, he'll do it without Earth's protection." Carter held up her hand. "Marcus, wait. Let's not make this worse than it already is." "Worse?" Webb turned to face her. "Madam President, A human colony just declared independence and allied with an alien power. How much worse can it get? The answer came 3 hours later when General Paul Adams sent his own message to military commanders across the solar system. All Earth Defense Forces are hereby ordered to treat Mars as a hostile territory, Adams announced. Any human who aids the Martian separatists will be considered a traitor to humanity. Carter stared at the screen in shock. Did he just declare war on Mars? He doesn't have the authority, Reed said weakly. He has the guns, Webb replied. Authority is whoever the military follows. Aboard the Frontier, racing toward Earth at maximum speed, Jake Morrison watched his species tear itself apart in real time. Emma Stone was monitoring communications from across the solar system, and the reports were devastating. Captain, Earth defense ships are moving toward Mars, she reported. Foster has activated the colony's defensive systems. Both sides are preparing for battle. Any word from the Zephyrians? Jake asked. They're withdrawing their ships from both Earth and Mars orbit, Emma replied. Sub-Commander Kethara sent a message saying they don't want to interfere in internal human affairs. Dr. Kevin Shaw let out a bitter laugh. Internal affairs they created. Lisa Parker was studying reports from Earth's academic and scientific communities. Jake, it's not just the politicians. The division is spreading everywhere. Half the scientific community wants to work with the aliens. The other half says it's a trap. What about the military? Jake asked. Ryan Brooks answered, from his engineering station. Split down the middle. About half are following Adams, the other half are sticking with civilian authority. There are reports of confrontations at military bases. The situation grew worse by the hour. Corporate leader Diana Ross held a press conference announcing that her company would honor all contracts with the Zephyrian Empire, regardless of government policy. Environmental groups split between those who saw alien technology as salvation and those who viewed it as another form of colonization. On Mars, Governor Foster was meeting with Zephyrian advisor Caxmore in the colony's command center. The alien warrior looked pleased as he watched reports from Earth. Your species learns quickly, Caxmore said. Most take longer to reach this stage of the process. What process? Foster demanded. You said Mars would be protected. Mars will be protected, Caxmore assured him. From Earth, from external threats, from itself. The Empire takes care of its assets. Foster didn't like the word assets, but it was too late to back down now. Earth defense ships were already burning toward Mars, and his only protection came from the aliens who had started this mess. Back on Earth, President Carter was losing control of her own government. Secretary of Defense Webb had locked himself in the Pentagon and was issuing orders without consulting anyone. Secretary of State Reed was trying to maintain contact with other world governments, but many were starting to make their own deals with Zephyrian representatives. Madam President, General Adams said during a video call, I'm ordering the arrest of all known alien sympathizers. This includes several members of Congress and at least 6 corporate leaders. You don't have that authority, Paul, Carter replied. I have the authority to protect humanity from traitors, Adams shot back. Earth Defense Command answers to humanity, not to politicians who want to sell us out to aliens. The call ended, and Carter realized she was no longer in command of her own military. Jake Morrison arrived at Earth 3 days later to find the planet's orbital space filled with warships pointing guns at each other. Half flew Earth defense flags. The other half showed the banner of the Free Earth Coalition, politicians and military officers who opposed Adams's takeover. Captain, Emma Stone said quietly, I'm detecting weapons locks. Multiple ships are targeting each other. Get me the president, Jake ordered. Sir, there are 3 people claiming to be in charge of Earth right now, Emma replied. President Carter is in the White House. General Adams is at the Pentagon, and Senator William Clark has set up what he calls a government in exile in Geneva. This is insane, Dr. Shaw muttered. They're doing exactly what the aliens want. Jake made his decision. Get me a channel to all human ships and installations. I'm making a general broadcast. When the channel opened, Jake found himself speaking to a fractured species. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the UES Frontier. I've spent weeks with the Zephyrians, and I need all humans to listen carefully. We're being played." He began explaining what his crew had learned about the fracture protocol and Zephyrian manipulation techniques. Some listeners seemed to understand, but others dismissed his warnings as propaganda from various factions. "The aliens aren't just offering us a choice between joining them or fighting them," Jake continued. "They're making us fight each other so they won't have to fight us at all." General Adams' response came within an hour. "Captain Morrison has been compromised by alien influence. All loyal humans should ignore his propaganda and focus on defending Earth from real threats." Governor Foster sent his own message from Mars. "Morrison is clearly working for Earth's corrupt government. Mars stands ready to protect all humans who want freedom from Earth's tyranny." The Zephyrian response came from High Chancellor Vextar himself. "The Empire grieves to see humanity suffering from internal conflict. We remain ready to help all human factions achieve peace and prosperity." Jake realized that every word he spoke was being twisted to support different sides. The truth was becoming another weapon in humanity's civil war. The breaking point came when a Free Earth Coalition ship fired on an Earth defense vessel near the moon. Both sides claimed the other started the fight, but within hours, human ships were killing each other across the solar system. Dr. Amy Collins, the Frontier's chief medical officer, spoke for many of the crew when she confronted Jake in private. "Captain, maybe we should accept the Zephyrian offer. Look at what's happening, we're destroying ourselves." "That's exactly what they want us to think, Amy," Jake replied. "But what if they're right?" Collins pressed. "What if humans really can't work together without outside guidance? Maybe the oldest law exists because species like us need it." Jake looked around the bridge and saw doubt in every face. Ryan Brooks still supported him, but even Lisa Parker seemed uncertain. Emma Stone was quietly crying as she monitored reports of human casualties. That night, Jake received a private message from Subcommander Cathara. Her image appeared in his ready room, and for the first time, she looked genuinely sad. "Captain Morrison," she said, "the Empire does not wish to see humanity destroy itself. We can end this conflict in days if you help us." "By surrendering?" Jake asked. "By accepting reality," Cathara replied. "Your species is doing exactly what every other species has done when faced with this choice. You are proving that the oldest law exists for good reason." "What do you want from me?" "Information about Earth's military defenses and the location of resistance leaders. In return, we will ensure that millions of humans survive in our protection. The alternative is watching your species burn itself to ashes." Jake stared at the alien's golden eyes. Around him, humanity was tearing itself apart exactly as the Zephyrians had predicted. Maybe Collins was right, maybe some humans were better than no humans. "I need time to think," he said. "Time is running out, Captain," Cathara warned. "Every day you delay, more of your people die in pointless battles." After she signed off, Jake sat alone in his ready room, holding the weight of his species' future. Outside his window, human ships continued their deadly dance following the steps of a cosmic ballet choreographed by alien masters. The oldest law was being tested, and humanity was failing catastrophically. Jake Morrison stood in his ready room, staring at a picture of his family on Earth. His wife Sarah and their 2 children smiled back at him from happier times before humanity met the Zephyrians and began tearing itself apart. The Civil War had been raging for 2 weeks. Human ships burned across the solar system as Earth defense forces fought the Free Earth Coalition. Mars had sealed its borders and was shooting at anyone who approached. The death toll was already in the hundreds of thousands. A soft chime announced an incoming message. Jake's heart sank when he saw it was from his brother Steve, a colonel in Earth Defense Command. "Jake," Steve's tired face appeared on the screen. "Things are bad down here, really bad. Adams has declared martial law, but half the military won't follow his orders. We're fighting in the streets of major cities." Jake leaned forward. "Steve, you need to get out of there." "Can't do that, brother. Someone has to hold the line against the crazies who want to hand Earth over to the aliens." Steve paused, looking older than his 45 years. Look, I'm sending you coordinates for a hidden base. If something happens to me, make sure the Resistance gets this information. The transmission ended, leaving Jake alone with his fears. His brother was a target, his family was trapped in a war zone, and the aliens were offering him a way to save them all. Another chime brought a message from High Chancellor Vextar himself. The tall alien appeared calm and sympathetic as he spoke. Captain Morrison, the Empire watches with great sadness as humanity destroys itself. We have seen this pattern before. Your species is following the same path as the Corvani, the Threll, and so many others. Jake had heard those names before. They were species that now served in the Zephyrian Empire. What happened to them? Civil war, just like this, Vextar replied. Brother fighting brother until their civilizations collapsed. We saved the survivors and gave them new purpose within our empire. We can do the same for humanity. At what price? The price is already being paid, Captain. Your people are dying by the thousands. We can stop this conflict in hours if you provide us with the locations of military installations and resistance leaders. Jake felt sick. You want me to betray my own species? We want you to save your species, Vextar corrected. Those who cooperate will live. Those who resist will die in pointless battles. The choice is simple. The offer came with a sweetener. Your family on Earth is in great danger, Captain. The fighting has reached their city. We can extract them to safety, along with your crew's families. All we ask in return is information. Jake's hands shook as he thought about Sarah and the kids. Were they hiding in their basement while battles raged in the streets? Were they already dead? Dr. Amy Collins chose that moment to visit his ready room. The ship's chief medical officer looked exhausted from treating wounded humans from both sides of the conflict. Captain, we need to talk, she said, closing the door behind her. Half the crew thinks we should accept the Zephyrian offer. The other half wants to keep fighting. We're as divided as everyone else. What do you think, Amy? I think we're watching our species commit suicide, she said bluntly. I've been treating burn victims, radiation poisoning, battle trauma. For what? So we can prove we're too stubborn to accept help? Jake remained silent, so Collins continued. The aliens are offering us a chance to survive. Maybe we won't be independent, but we'll be alive. Isn't that better than this? Before Jake could answer, Ryan Brooks burst into the room. Captain, you need to see this. Emma intercepted something big. They rushed to the bridge where Emma Stone was working frantically at her communication station. I broke their encryption on a high-level Zephyrian channel, she said excitedly. They're not just observers, Jake. They're actively coordinating the conflict. The main screen showed a series of intercepted messages. Zephyrian agents were feeding information to both sides, ensuring that battles continued and casualties mounted. They were supplying weapons to Mars while secretly helping Earth Defense Forces locate free Earth bases. They're making sure we keep fighting, Jake realized. It gets worse, Emma continued. I found their real plan. Once human casualties reach a certain level, they're going to move in and restore order by eliminating all remaining resistance. Lisa Parker looked up from her analysis station. Jake, I've been studying their historical records. Every species that joined their empire went through this exact same process. Civil war, outside intervention, then subjugation. How many species have they conquered this way? Jake asked. All of them, Lisa replied grimly. The 12 species in their empire weren't allies. They were victims. The revelation hit Jake like a physical blow. The Zephyrians weren't trying to save humanity from civil war. They had caused the civil war as a method of conquest. Dr. Shaw joined the discussion. It's brilliant, in a horrible way. They don't have to fight us directly. They just have to convince us to fight each other. Jake's personal communicator chimed with another message from Vextar. This time, the alien's tone was more urgent. Captain, your brother's base has been located by hostile forces. We can warn him, but only if you provide us with the defensive codes for Earth's orbital stations. Time is running short. Jake stared at the message. The aliens had his brother's location and were offering to save him in exchange for information that would doom Earth's defenses. "Captain," Emma said quietly, "there's something else. I found references to your family in their communications. They know exactly where Sarah and the kids are." The implication was clear. The Zephyrians had Jake's family under surveillance and could eliminate them at any time. The offer to extract them to safety was really a threat disguised as kindness. Ryan Brooks put a hand on Jake's shoulder. "They're using your family as leverage." Jake felt the walls closing in around him. His species was destroying itself. His family was in mortal danger, and the aliens were offering him a way to save some humans at the cost of dooming all of them. "What would you do?" he asked his crew. Dr. Collins spoke first. "Save who we can. If the alternatives are everyone dies or some people live, the choice is obvious." "That's what they want us to think," Ryan countered. "But if we give them what they want, we're not saving anyone. We're just changing how humanity dies." Lisa Parker was studying the historical data. "Jake, look at this. Every species that cooperated with them during the transition period was eventually eliminated. The Zephyrians keep the useful technology and resources, but they don't keep the people." Emma Stone nodded grimly. "The collaborators always disappear once the conquest is complete." Jake looked around the bridge at faces he trusted more than his own family. These people had followed him into the unknown, and now they were asking him to make the hardest decision of his life. His communicator chimed again. This time it was a message from Steve, and Jake's blood ran cold as he read it. "Under attack. Base compromised. Don't know how they found us. Tell Mom and Dad I love them." The transmission cut off. Jake's brother was probably dead or captured, and Jake had information that might have saved him. All he had to do was betray his entire species to get it. "Captain," Vexitar's voice filled the bridge as another message arrived. "I regret to inform you that your brother's base has fallen. However, your family on Earth is still safe. We can protect them, along with selected members of your crew and their loved ones." The alien's golden eyes seemed to look directly at Jake through the screen. "All we ask is your cooperation in bringing this pointless conflict to an end. Provide us with Earth's defense codes and the locations of remaining resistance cells. In return, we will ensure the survival of those humans who matter most to you." Jake closed his eyes and saw Sarah's face, heard his children's laughter, remembered his brother's final message. When he opened them again, he saw his crew waiting for his decision. The oldest law was being tested, and Jake Morrison was about to discover what it truly meant to be human. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the frontier, his finger hovering over the communication controls. High Chancellor Vextar waited for his answer, golden eyes filled with what looked like patience and understanding. The choice seemed simple. Give the aliens what they wanted and save his family along with selected humans. Refuse. And watch everyone he loved die in humanity's pointless civil war. But as Jake looked at his crew, he remembered something his father had told him years ago. "Son, when someone offers you an easy choice between right and wrong, it's usually not really a choice at all." "Vextar," Jake said finally, "I have an answer for you." The alien leaned forward slightly. "I am listening, Captain." "Go to hell." Jake cut the transmission and turned to his crew. "Emma, broadcast everything we've learned about the Zephyrian manipulation on all human channels. Every frequency, every language, every colony." "Sir, they'll kill your family," Dr. Collins said, tears in her eyes. "They were going to kill them anyway," Jake replied quietly. "Once they're done using us, they eliminate everyone who knows the truth." Lisa proved that with their historical records. Ryan Brooks was already at his station. "What are your orders, Captain?" "We're going to show these aliens what the oldest law really means," Jake said. "Emma, include the Zephyrian ship positions and tactical data in the broadcast. If humanity is going to fight, we'll fight the real enemy." The transmission went out across the solar system, reaching Earth, Mars, the outer colonies, and beyond. For the first time since the crisis began, humans were hearing the truth about their situation. On Earth, President Helen Carter watched Jake's broadcast from her bunker beneath the White House. General Adams was there too, along with representatives from the Free Earth Coalition who had agreed to a temporary ceasefire to hear Morrison's message. "My God," Carter whispered as the evidence unfolded. "They've been playing us against each other from the beginning." General Adams looked sick. "All those people who died in the fighting, we killed each other for nothing." Senator Clark, leader of the Free Earth Coalition, nodded grimly. "The question is, what do we do now?" On Mars, Governor Foster was having his own crisis of conscience. Zephyrian advisor Caxmore stood beside him as they watched Morrison's broadcast, the alien's scarred face showing no emotion. "This changes nothing," Caxmore said. "Mars still needs our protection." "Protection from what?" Foster demanded. "From the war you started? From the enemies you invented?" "From the reality of galactic politics," Caxmore replied. "Weak species do not survive. We are offering you strength." Foster looked at the alien with new eyes. "No, you're offering us slavery." The governor's hand moved to his sidearm, but Caxmore was faster. The alien's cybernetic weapon discharged, and Foster fell to the floor of his own command center. "Mars is now under direct Imperial administration," Caxmore announced to the stunned human staff. "Anyone who resists will join your former governor." But Foster's death became the spark that ignited human resistance across the solar system. The Martian colonists, seeing their leader murdered by his alien protector, rose up in spontaneous revolt. Similar uprisings began on other worlds where Zephyrian advisors had been placed. Aboard the Frontier, Jake was coordinating humanity's response when Lisa Parker made a discovery that changed everything. "Jake, I've been analyzing the Zephyrian historical records more carefully," she said excitedly. "I found something they tried to hide." "What is it?" "The 12 species in their empire weren't all conquered the same way," Lisa explained. 3 of them, the Corvani, the Threll, and the Vash, they're not extinct, they're prisoners. Emma Stone looked up from her station. "What do you mean?" "The Zephyrians didn't replace these species. They enslaved them," Lisa continued. "There are still populations of the original races hidden throughout the Empire, forced to work as laborers and technicians." Jake felt a surge of hope. "If there are survivors, maybe they'd help us fight back." "There's more," Lisa said. "The oldest? Law isn't a Zephyrian principle at all. It comes from one of the enslaved species. The Zephyrians perverted it into a tool for conquest." Dr. Shaw was studying the cultural data. "If we could get this information to those enslaved populations, they might rebel," Jake finished. "Emma, can you broadcast this beyond human space? Can you reach the Zephyrian Empire?" Emma's fingers flew over her controls. "I can piggyback our signal on their communication network. But Jake, once we do this, there's no going back. They'll know we're not just fighting for humanity anymore." "Good," Jake said. "Let them know we're fighting for everyone they've enslaved." The broadcast went out across the galaxy, carrying the truth about Zephyrian conquest methods and the location of enslaved populations. The response was immediate and overwhelming. On a dozen worlds throughout the Empire, species that had been enslaved for centuries began to rise up. The Corvani sabotaged Imperial shipyards. The Threll poisoned Zephyrian food supplies. The Vash used their energy manipulation abilities to destroy power grids on Imperial worlds. High Chancellor Vextar appeared on Jake's screen one final time, and all pretense of benevolence was gone. His golden eyes burned with rage as he spoke. "You have made a grave mistake, Captain Morrison. The Empire will not tolerate this rebellion. Earth will be sterilized as an example to others. The oldest law says never betray your own kind," Jake replied. "You've been violating it for millennia. Every species you enslaved, every civilization you destroyed, they were all someone's own kind." "You understand nothing," Vextar snarled. "The strong rule, the weak serve. This is the natural order." "Then you don't know humans very well," Jake said. "We have a saying, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. You picked the wrong species to test. The Zephyrian fleet moved toward Earth, but they weren't facing the divided, weakened humanity they had expected. President Carter had united the world governments. General Adams had recalled all Earth defense forces. Even the Martian rebels, despite the loss of their governor, were sending ships to help defend humanity's home world. The battle for Earth lasted 3 days. Human ships, outgunned and outnumbered, fought with desperate courage against their would-be conquerors. Jake's crew performed miracles, using their knowledge of Zephyrian technology to target weak points in enemy vessels. But the real victory came from an unexpected source. As the battle raged around Earth, enslaved species throughout the Zephyrian Empire struck simultaneously at Imperial installations. The Corvani, master engineers, had been maintaining the Empire's ships and stations for centuries. Now they used that knowledge to sabotage critical systems. The Threll, gifted healers, had been forced to keep Zephyrian leaders healthy. Now they introduced carefully crafted biological agents that targeted Zephyrian physiology. The Vash, who had been powering Imperial cities, redirected energy flows to overload and destroy infrastructure. Within hours, the mighty Zephyrian Empire was collapsing from within. Ships lost power, stations went dark, and centuries of oppression crumbled as enslaved populations reclaimed their freedom. High Chancellor Vextar's final message reached Jake as the alien leader's flagship burned in Earth's orbit. "You have doomed the galaxy," Vextar said, his image flickering as his ship's systems failed. "Without the Empire's order, chaos will consume everything." "Maybe," Jake replied, "but it will be our chaos, chosen freely. That's what the real oldest law means. Never abandon your own kind, even when it's hard, even when it hurts." The battle ended with the destruction of the Zephyrian fleet. But the cost had been enormous. Millions of humans were dead. Earth's cities lay in ruins and entire colonies had been devastated. Jake stood in the cemetery outside what had been Washington, D.C., looking at the graves of those who had died defending humanity. His family was safe, but his brother Steve was among the fallen, along with countless others who had paid the ultimate price for freedom. Emma Stone joined him among the headstones. "The other species are asking for help rebuilding their worlds," she said quietly. "We'll help them," Jake replied. "That's what the oldest law really means. We look out for each other. Not just humans, but anyone who stands against tyranny." Lisa Parker approached with a report from the science team studying captured Zephyrian technology. "We're learning incredible things, Jake. With this knowledge, we can help heal worlds they damaged, restore species they nearly destroyed. And make sure this never happens again," Ryan Brooks added, joining the group. "We're sharing everything with the liberated species. No more empires built on lies and oppression." Dr. Shaw had his own report. "The psychological profiles we developed during this crisis are helping us understand how to resist manipulation in the future. We're teaching other species to recognize the signs." Jake looked at the monument being erected in the center of the cemetery. The inscription was still being carved, but he could read the words. "They tested our greatest law, loyalty to our own kind. We answered with our lives, our hope, and our refusal to yield. This is what it means to be human." But below that, in smaller text, were words that Jake had suggested. "And we learned that our own kind includes everyone who chooses freedom over slavery, truth over lies, and courage over fear." As Jake walked away from the cemetery, he thought about the real, oldest law, not the Zephyrian perversion that used